Welcome to Untamed Blossoms, the podcast where we celebrate the untamed journey of womanhood. Here, we tell the stories of incredible women who have embraced their authenticity, inspiring others to do the same.
From entrepreneurs to artists, activists to adventurers, we share triumphs, challenges, and the beauty of self-discovery. These are the stories of women blazing their own trails, breaking free, and blooming unapologetically.
Join us to connect, be inspired, and celebrate the power of women's stories. Together, let's rewrite the rules and embrace our wildness.
Welcome to Untamed Blossoms. I'm your host, Amanda Riley.
And I'm Christy Riley. Welcome to the show.
I literally just forgot how we even start this.
It's vacation brain at its finest. But you look very tan.
Oh, look how tan I am.
You look great.
I went to get coffee before I came here.
Yes.
And I pulled up to the window and I get a lot of compliments on my car, like especially the color of my car.
Right.
People are always like, oh my gosh, your Jeep's so pretty.
Jeep. Beautiful.
Everyone's just always like, so cute. I'm like, well, why do you think I bought it? But so I pull up to the window and she's like, I love the color. And I was expecting her to say my Jeep. She's like, of your hair, it looks so good. I was like, oh my gosh, thank you. And what I really wanted to say was it is the tan. The tan makes my hair look extra white.
Listen, the tan makes everything.
It does.
And mostly because you and I are sun goddesses and we love to worship and lay out in the sun for long, long hours and be all the tans.
Brittany is offering to give spray tans.
I should have gone to see her while you were gone so that we would have matching tan.
When I was editing our last episode, you did mention that you might do that. So I was hoping I was going to come in. You're going to be all bronze. So I was like, whoa.
Wow. I did not go.
While I was on vacation, I saw more dolphins this time than I've ever seen in my whole life.
That's fantastic.
So many. I don't know if it was just like the water was frigid, but allegedly per science, it was warmer than normal. And so maybe that's why, but we saw
you're in Florida.
So many. Yes.
Just to give everybody context. Yeah.
The Gulf of Mexico is where we were. And there were just so many. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And my friend took us out on her boat. Shout out to Captain Jamie. And we went to this cute little restaurant called Ben's. And it was right, just like you pull your boat up.
Right.
Restaurant bar, right?
Love those are my favorite.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, those are my favorite.
And then we just saw like a bunch of little baby dolphins. And it was just,
there's nothing more magical than going out into the Gulf and being surrounded by a pod. By a pod, I mean 30, 40 dolphins. And all the babies and they're just frolicking together and it's magical just to sit there and watch them. I sat for hours and watched. We got in the midst of one day and it was so cool.
They're just sea life also is just wild. I mean, Noah caught a lot of fish. He got a lot of shark actually. And no, he's gonna be mad if he listens to this. It wasn't a pompano, but it's related to a pompano. And they look just alike, basically, and so whatever. But
he caught a lot of colorful fish, y'all. That's
really
so they were beautiful. Yeah, they were beautiful. All the pictures are so great.
I'm so glad you released them back. But I'm gonna take a hard right. However, I saw on my science page that I follow on Instagram that they have discovered all these rings in the bottom of the ocean floor. Did I send that to you?
Aliens, y'all.
So you're telling me we got crop circles. The equivalent of a crop circle
under
on the ocean floor.
Yeah.
Those are aliens.
Yeah.
Also, have you ever seen a squid? That's an alien.
For sure. An octopus.
Like we went fishing and 2 years ago on a boat and the guy caught us bait before we got on the boat.
Yeah.
He was like, I actually caught a squid if you want to look at it. It's like clear until it's around something else and it's a different. That's an alien.
Yeah.
You're not telling me those just came of this earth.
I think the same thing about octopus though. They can change their color and shape. And they're super intelligent. Yeah. I don't know. I found myself in a weird spot in social media lately and I watched them. I didn't even know that this was a thing but there are ships that take these giant animals onto their ship and wash all the barnacles off of them and like save them and then put them back. And so it was a giant squid, which is the most humongous thing I've ever seen in my whole life.
Yeah.
On this giant ship being all debarnacled. And then it gets off and then it kind of held on to the boat, which it literally looked like a kraken. Like it could have just taken it down at any moment when we think we're almighty and powerful, you know, like this thing could topsize this boat easily.
Right now.
Like right now. And it kind of held on, but was like very gentle, like, thank you.
You're telling me the moment we start talking about aliens, the tracker on the camera turns on out of nowhere.
Yeah, you notice we switched positions because I'm assuming you're going to edit most of what just happened.
Yeah, I'm going to edit all that out, but that was wild.
Suddenly the camera just started tracking me and got Amanda out of the camera angle, which we've never had the tracker on before. So that's bizarre.
Huh. Well, long story short,
we believe in all of it. Thank you.
Anyway, well, let's finish this up before who knows.
Aliens take over fully.
Today we have an awesome guest, Teresa. She was in sales for a really long time and then in her 30s decided, no,
switch gears.
It's not for me.
Right.
Going into therapy.
Yeah.
And she combines therapy with astrology, which, you know, we love.
We said that together. I love that.
We love.
Yeah.
So really
excited to talk to her. She's in Denver,
Colorado.
Yeah.
So
So we'll be chatting with her by Zoom and can't wait to talk to her about how she has married those two things together, astrology and therapy, and which is a lot how we experience human design with Sarah. So it should be a really interesting conversation.
I'm excited to find out what her astrological sign is.
No.
And hopefully we have another Sag queen. We've had a lot of Sages on the show.
We have.
So 3 that I know of.
Yes.
And not including you and me as a rising.
Right.
So 3 additional. That's crazy.
3 additional. Yeah. Yeah. We've been surrounded by Sagittarian energy.
One might say we attract it.
We definitely do. So. Without further ado, y'all.
Hello, Teresa. Welcome to the pod. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're great. We're happy to meet you virtually.
Oh, thank you. This worked out so well. The moon is in Scorpio today, which is my 10th house of career and public image. So let's do it.
I love this.
That's awesome.
I love this. Okay, so tell us your sign and your rising. Tell us all your things.
Oh my God. So proud of you. Thank you.
We rock that.
So I am an Aquarius sun, Cancer moon, Aquarius rising.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I was actually curious about you guys and what your signs are.
You go first.
I'm a Sag with a Cancer rising or a Cancer moon.
I am a Leo sun, Sag rising, Gemini moon.
Fun.
Yep.
Lots of chaos over here.
Lots of emotion on my end. I'm very an emotional girl.
I also have a Cancer moon, sister. I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. All the emotions all the time.
My Gemini moon won't allow it. I'm like, you gotta switch gears before things get too serious.
Well, you know what? You got to talk it out.
Mm-hmm.
And anyone who knows you got to talk it out. Say, this might not even apply to you, but I got to talk it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I do love talking. Obviously, I have a podcast, but my Leo sun, like I don't love taking advice. And I'm a Sag rising. So I'm like, also let me just do what I want, but also listen to me.
So your moon is in Gemini and your Sag is rising.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. That's like super curiosity to just know all the things. I want to learn that.
And boy, do I do it. I have a garage full of things I've started. And I was like, oh, I want to start making this thing. So I'm going to buy literally everything that is involved in this activity. And then like a week later, I'm like, okay, that was fun. I'm over this now. So
we're similar in that way, only because of my Sag period. I like all the new things.
Chaos.
Is that Sag sun? Chris?
I'm a Sag sun, Cancer moon. I don't remember what my rising is. It's not in front of me right now. I don't remember that.
Wow.
I should know that offhand.
That's okay.
Yeah, but I don't. I want to say Aries, but I'm not sure if that's true.
I highly doubt that.
I doubt that. No.
We can definitely do like a separate one where I do your signs and give you like a little month ahead because I love that stuff.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Yeah, we love all the things astrology, all the things human design, any way that you can take all of the science to make it impactful in your life, we're here for it. So rock on, girl.
So
Love that.
I know you incorporate a lot of astrology in therapy. So before we head too far back, can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of married those two? Like those are, I think people would think are a little opposite. We know they're not,
Correct.
but love to hear from you about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking me, because there are people that are like, they absolutely hate astrology, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, hate's a strong word, but they're like, how dare you? But they love me as a therapist. And they say, you know, we don't want to do astrology. I don't need that tea. And then I have ones that are like, no, I'm literally here for the astrology. And so I studied astrology since I was 17. I was at a party once and I found these parents' library. They had an astrology book, and I was like, okay, this is so much more interesting than talking to my friends. And I just fell down a rabbit hole. So it kind of really saved me for my young adult years.
Okay.
Astrology did. And my aunt, who is like a real like guru astrologer, like back in the day, it was a class in her college. She taught me about astrology. I was like, why are all these people dying in my life? Like at just like a young age. I was like, why am I different? And she's like, oh, your chart is full of 12th house. It's full of the 10th. Like you need a creative outlet. Like that's what you're going to need. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. And then you go to college and you're like, what the hell? Right. And then you leave college and you're like, what the hell? So one of my favorite demographics is young adults, because there's so much like, what am I doing with my life? And astrology really helped me with that. And then in 2020, I went to school to get my master's to be a therapist.
Wow.
So I was like, this is great and all. Love the title of a therapist, love working with, you know, high acuity type of patients, more severe patients. And I was like, but they need to know that they're just going through a transit, right? Like not everyone, but really, I was like, they need to know this is like a 3-year thing and they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's a great way to look at that.
So, I mean, you could say it's astrology, or you could say, you know, it's time and timing, but like if you just pull up your chart, you could be like, "Oh, okay, I'm being tested right now with finding a sense of home in myself." Or for all the Virgos, past 2 years, I'm being tested in my relationships big time. Like you could just, I don't know, it's like a roadmap that is super helpful.
Yeah, totally. Having my Venus in Virgo, I can hear you on that one, the dusting part. So
My husband's son is Virgo, and literally every relationship has been tested, I think, except for ours.
yeah.
Like, but all of his external relationships have been really in turmoil. So,
Over the
like,
past year and a half.
yeah, like really looking at all of them. His relationship with business, his relationship with people, his relationship with like all of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I obviously say that I'm engaged to a Virgo. So I'm like, obviously, a lot of my clients are Virgos right now as well. I'm like, y'all are going to be okay. You're just being tested on building a foundation. A lot of the times we're just being tested on like, you know, the universe is asking you like commit harder. If you really love something, commit harder. If you don't, shit
Let
are
it
gonna
go.
hot
Right.
Mm-hmm.
type
Right.
of energy.
So
Exactly.
you mentioned your aunt a little bit in her kind of involvement in astrology. So tell us a little bit about growing up and the family dynamic and how you navigated that, especially with someone who was in tune to these things.
I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about like my 4 siblings and my parents, and I have been talking about astrology forever, and they hate it. They hate it. They hate it. They're like, OT, you know, like you and your wacky astrology. And that's been a lot of my life, you know, doing things where people were like, no, this isn't going to give you money. No, you make no sense. Make it make sense, right? Like, God, just not being understood. And so my aunt, um, was the one, and those are my step siblings. So my real dad, my blood family in Wisconsin, they're just very creative and very open-minded. And they really encouraged me to kind of just like believe in it and have faith. And it's just nice to have someone who knows what you're trying to study. Like if something were to happen, I'd call my aunt. She'd be like, oh, yeah, I mean, Leos are your good luck right now. Like find a Leo in your life. And like at that time, both of my bosses were Leos and I was living in Utah. And it was just like, I don't know. Yeah. Growing up, family could care less about astrology. It really like fell into my bones in 2020.
Okay. Wow. And did you grow up in Utah or were you in Colorado? Like where?
So this is actually something I wanted to mention. I grew up in South Florida, went to school in Michigan, left when I was 18. I applied to like 25 schools. I was like, what are the biggest party schools? Literally Googled that.
Where can I go?
I was like, everyone in Florida is crazy. I got to get out of here. I had visited my cousins in Chicago in the Midwest, and I was like, they have real grass. They have like basement parties. Like men aren't trying to always just, it's just growing up in South Florida is crazy. And I write about that in my book. It's just a different lifestyle. So went to school in Michigan. After Michigan, I went to LA, tried to do stand-up comedy, be a famous actress.
Love that.
Girl, I mean, people say, what? I swear, oblivion is bliss. Like, I didn't know that I was like making no sense at all.
I love that you made a choice and you were like, you know what? I'm going to give it a whirl. And you went. You know, you didn't talk about it. You should. That's cool. I think that giving ourselves credence and permission to do those things, even if it doesn't go anywhere, I can promise that you probably look back at that neck of your life and say that segment and be like, this is what I learned about myself.
Yeah, I love you for saying that. I've recently talked to my own therapist about that. I'm like, I've just failed so many times. I've just failed.
A lot of lessons. That's what I call them. A lot of lessons.
A lot of lessons. And she's like, there's no quota. Like,
Yeah.
Who makes that up?
I had a therapist who asked me to do that once, who literally is like, the things that you consider a failure, can you look at them and reframe them and write them down about all the things that you learned about yourself during that time? And it was a magical thing. It was a magical thing to take that and rewire it in my brain as those aren't failures, they were lessons. Mm-hmm. And now I forever will say that, because if you really put pen to paper, it's a magical thing that happens in your brain about failure. It's not failure. You're so brave. I came away going, I was brave. I was brave and I stepped away and I did it and I learned all these things.
So okay. So once again, the astrology showed me. I called my aunt. I'm like, why are we on to another job? You know, and I have Pluto in the 10th house for anyone who's into astrology. And that's just like a lot of death and rebirth in your career. And that is what my book is about. That's coming out this year, called 30 Jobs Before 30.
Oh, I love this. Yes. I love the title.
It gets, before LA, I was working in Alaska as a mover. After LA, I moved to Chicago, and I was a startup consultant. I worked for a bunch of startups. I was in sales. After Chicago, I was in Utah and then Denver. And I'm like, I'm good now in Denver. Good now in Denver. But I tell that story because I had this woman once in Costa Rica say to me, she's like, you're leaking too much energy with your moves. And at the time I was like, oh, that's really convincing. Like that. Wow. I was like, she's right. She knows everything about me. And like looking back, I'm like, no way. I needed to live all those experiences.
Yeah.
There's no way I could tell people how to live their life right now at the age that I'm at if I didn't get out of my comfort zone fail, try new things, had no money, then had no money. Like it was all meant to be.
Do you feel like a lot of that came from internal like desire and push and pull, or do you feel like any of it was like familial, like, okay, I want to get away, I need to get out of this? Like, where do you think that push and pull came from?
That's such a good question. Because my 4 siblings, they are all married with children in the suburbs. And I always beat myself up about that. I was like, God, I should be doing that. Um, I don't know if it was just boredom or like a lack of just not feeling smart enough because I wasn't like well traveled. Um, I was just super curious. And I'm like, okay, got it. I digested it. On to the next.
Yeah. It also sounds like you have a healthy relationship with change and risk. And I think a lot of people stay where it's comfortable and safe. And when you have a different relationship with those things, it allows you to be free.
Yeah. Thank you. My chart ruler is change. So I should continue to change. But yeah, I was just like, I was in sales for 10 years, getting that paycheck, selling out for that paycheck. And then I would go and do a really spiritual job for a year. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm running out of money. Got to go back to corporate America, put on my tie and, be the sales girl, schmooze them and dine them. And then I'd be like, okay, this is burning my soul. Got to go work at a rehab, which wasn't, moved me into my therapy career. But like, yeah, it was like never settled. And now I'm like, for the past 2 years, I'm like, yes, this is where it all was meant to lead me.
So tell us about the rehab. That's super interesting. Yeah. How did that spark your desire to want to be in therapy?
Well, there is a fair amount of addiction in my family. So it was always just, and I write about this in the book. Like my mom was taking me to AA meetings when I was 10. And I was just like, okay, I don't want to be here. Like it's a very almost desensitized type of behavior that comes from being around it so much. Probably also like comfortableness to it. Also, it's like all in my chart that I'm just like really comfortable in that type of setting. So where was I? God, I was living in Utah at the time. I was like burnt out from living in downtown Chicago doing sales. I was living in Utah working at an art gallery and then working at a rehab. And I was like, I want to get my master's. I want to be a therapist. And my dad at the time, he's like, why don't you go work at a rehab first and see before we spend, 80,000 on you to get your master's. And I was like, okay, fine. And I walked into every rehab and I was like, I need a job. I'm going to be great, blah, blah, blah. Cause I had already gone to nursing school twice.
Oh, okay.
So my dad's like, let's try it out, T. That's what I'm saying. This is why I need young adults to be like, your purpose is exactly what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
It's nothing more than what you're doing right now.
The purpose is the journey. We say that all the time.
Yes, I love that so much. So yeah, I started working at this rehab in Utah and like there's not a lot of staff in Utah. So they put me in charge of a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have been in charge of.
Gosh.
Like I got in trouble a lot. I always get in trouble. It's in my chart, whatever, But I just loved it. I just loved just the raw authenticity of people coming in and being like, this point in my life sucks right now. And then just seeing them even like 3 weeks after being like, oh my God, like I got this. Like life is great. It's just, I think being around like raw authenticity is what makes me like want to live, makes me feel alive.
Yeah. It's a far cry from sales.
Oh my God. I always got in trouble in sales. They're like, you're on the phone for too long. It's supposed to be a 20-minute call. And I'm like, where'd you grow up?
Tell me about that.
Tell me about yourself. You're like, I'm interviewing you now.
But then I will say, you know, I still didn't trust myself enough at that point because the money wasn't there. And I don't know if anyone else can relate, but I had to move from Utah. My parents sold their house there and they were like, you know, go to Denver. I had a lot of friends in Denver from Michigan State randomly. I was like, I don't want to live in Denver. There's too many buildings. I don't want to live here. And I said to my therapist at the time, who's still my therapist, I said, what if I don't have enough money? You know, and she has this whole theory. I love it. I've made it like my theory, and it's called the and then what theory.
Mm.
She's like, okay, let's write it out. You move there, you don't have enough money, and then what? And I was like, oh, and then I get another job. She's like, okay, and then what? I'm like, and then I have 2 jobs and I don't even have time to see friends. And she's like, and then what? I'm like, and then I'll have so much money I won't even care because I'll be traveling. I won't even care about my local friends because I'll be traveling. And basically, she helped me come back into the world because Utah was a healing job, but I didn't have money. So I went back into sales when I got to Denver. Went back into sales. I was hustling, making money, and then the pandemic hit.
Mm.
And it was like, oh my God, this is it. I could literally visualize me running my private practice, writing this book, like just finding some closure for the first half of my life was really needed at the time.
It's so interesting because I feel like I'm going to say 70% of our guests talk about the pandemic and how that inspired them to do what they're doing today. And I think we look back and can easily be like, that was a horrible time or that was scary or all these things. But honestly, everything shutting down gave so many people the pause, the time, and the space to assess what they were doing and allowed them to say, like, is this what I want to continue doing? When have we ever collectively had the opportunity to assess our dreams until that happened? It's just such a wild thing we're seeing.
Am I happy? Am I not happy? Am I happy? And understanding what you're missing, right? So a lot of people are like, wow, I like my kids. I like spending time with them.
Yeah.
I like, you know, and so it created, or I don't like this much time with any of them, but you know, like whatever that was, right? And the assessment that happened is pretty cool. Yeah, you're totally right about that. Yeah.
You know, I always say to my clients, imagine like the life you're living right now, like you created it. You manifested this right now. So like the job you're in, that's all you. The partnership you're in, that's all you. And that kind of like takes you a little bit out of victim mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, I attracted this. I enabled this. And I don't say it in like a bad way, but
no, but it's true. We do. It's nobody's fault. Yeah. Yeah. You did this to yourself.
You know, I was in a relationship in 2020 that I had to end. It was a lot of pivoting. And if that's like a message I can give anyone is don't be afraid to pivot. I freaking love pivots. Queen of pivots.
Yeah. Yeah. This isn't working. Let's move a different direction. Yeah. And and for you, you can look at somebody's astrology chart and tell them if that's something that they're prone to or not. Correct?
Yes. That is one of like my biggest things, you know, like if I have a client that's like, God, I don't want to, or I get super shy. I get super shy in a big room, or I get super shy if I'm in with a lot of people. I'm like, that's your chart. That is a childhood thing. That is no longer your thing. Like that is a past life habit. We get to move on to this new North Node habit of yours, which is being messy. Throw a fit. Throw a fit. You're meant to throw a fit. Your past life is like, that's not you.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's so interesting too. I have always been into astrology as well. And I read tarot cards and you know, when you always know like your big 3, it's like, okay, this is why I do certain things. But when you can see the fullness of your chart, it just really can change your perspective of how you handle everything, like I was like, why am I so bossy in my relationships when I'm not really like that in other relationships, but like romantically, like I'm just a nightmare. And I was like, oh, well, my Virgo's in Venus and I'm a psychopath and I try to be in control of everything, and like it helps you better navigate the things that are right in front of you without feeling the stress to be normal, right? So why am I not like everyone else? Why doesn't this thing fulfill me that seems to fulfill other women? Or it just gives you that permission to be unique because everyone's unique.
Yes. Yeah, I'm so happy you said that. It's definitely permission. And I will say this, so therapists listening probably won't like this because it's this, right? The code of ethics. You can't be doing astrology and therapy. And don't worry, I'm not. It's separate. But it really does fast track you in those sessions, right? Therapy takes a long time to unravel that. Like, people are not going to come out and say, yeah, I had an eating disorder when I was 20.
Yeah.
You can suggest that you see it in the chart.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
within the third session, we're like talking about stuff.
And you've had that experience multiple times where you see things in their chart that you can kind of get to quicker in therapy if you can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Otherwise, I feel like therapists are flying blind based on, not that you're not trained to read between the lines and hear what people aren't really saying, right? But you still are somewhat dependent on what they're willing to share.
absolutely. And that's like why I wanted to marry the two together, because astrology, a lot of the time, you're telling someone. And I didn't like that. Like, I didn't like that. I'm like, you're bossy, or, you're like this. Where with therapy, though, a lot of you're learned to ask questions. You get taught to, like you said, read between the lines. And so marrying them together, it's not like a psychic session where you're like, you're gonna have this many kids, which those are sometimes so disempowering. Where with therapy, it's all about empowering you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
All
that
about
whenever you're able to, like at work, I was a manager. I kind of had the same experience of like, I've been in corporate America for a really long time because I need money, right? I need the money. And I recently took a huge jump to get out of corporate America. Of course, started the podcast and I'm doing a lot of other random things. And there's always that pull to want to jump back to where it's safe and where it feels comfy. And that's definitely in corporate America for me. But it always gets us closer to something else. And what I realized was being in corporate and being a manager of training and hiring new hires, I spent a lot of time getting able to know people and asking probing questions and asking behavioral based questions to really understand why an employee was doing something. And now that's helped me where I am doing something completely different, but it helped me gain a skill to get closer to that thing.
Yes, absolutely.
And what are like, I'm just curious, you've had a lot of different avenues of things that you've done and places you've lived. What are some things that you really feel like has been that golden thread that's pulled you through to where you are today?
I will say one thing. I do have to give my mother some credit because she was never like worried about the money. Like, that was all my dad and society and um other friends, but she was always like, you'll shovel shit if you have to. Like, I always had a job. I was never afraid that I'll never have a job
Yeah.
because I like working. I'm old school in that way. Probably something I need to heal. But I will always work. And so I think that always was something she instilled in me, was like, okay, if this doesn't work, something else will work. Like, if this isn't the have all end all, you'll always have something else to do. Um, and really, my mother always said, she's like, it's not about you. Go help someone else. Always. And I was like, okay. Also working on that in therapy. But it was super helpful when I was like in those ruts. Like, someone else needs information for where you've already been. And if anything, like the best thing you can do when you're depressed or sad or going through a phase, is really transform your sadness, transform your rut, transform your lows into gold. Make it gold. Tell everyone the lesson you learned. Write your memoir. Like, make it mean something to you so you're not so hard on yourself for those.
Yeah, sometimes it's just getting out of your own way, right? Like, go and do something for somebody else. Get out of your own mind and go and help somebody else. And so when you take yourself off of the wheel and make it about somebody else for a little bit, it gives that mental break that you need sometimes for clarity. I think is just going, that's, and that's what she was saying, right? Just go do something for somebody else. Go be in service. And
Yes.
that's in, I think, every spiritual text I've ever read. Like in every therapist thing I've ever read is like, be in service, be in service to others. And it doesn't have to be in service all the time, but if you find yourself in a rut or in a space, go be in service for the day. Go spend some time at a homeless shelter or, a soup kitchen or, some other place that people are surrounding you that makes your life a glaring gratitude list.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just great.
And that trend that's going on now, I don't know if you guys know, on TikTok, it's moved its way over to Instagram, but it's like what I met with my younger self today, and this is what she said.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wish I would tell my younger self, like, the money you'll always have enough. I mean, because it's true. I mean, I'm not driving a Rolls Royce over here, but it's like, I had this idea of like Chicago and the suburbs and Marie Childs and like a J. Crew girl. And like, I'm not a J. Crew girl. I'm not. And I wish I would have known that earlier on. And it took to my 30s to know that I'm just not.
You're a moon child, right? As your sign says. And, I think that we all do that. We go through these things or we're like, we want to be this person that we observe in media or that we observe outside of ourselves and aspire to be. And then when you come back to self, you're like, oh, I've just been a raging hippie this whole time who just wants to like peace and love and like hug a tree. But I spent all this time trying to become something that was never anything I ever wanted in the first place.
Yeah.
Accept yourself earlier.
Totally.
Yeah. Which is why we started this podcast, right? Letting people discover themselves through other women's stories, because we have found a common thread amongst us all is whether it's societal norms, whether it's listening to our parents or our family or our peers that has just beaten whatever our shining unique light was out of us. And then suddenly, whether it's in your 30s or your 60s, you're like,
how'd I get here?
Yeah. How'd I get here? What happened? And trying to find your way back, So, and it sounds like you're helping people do that every day.
Thank you. Thank you. I also had to leave an agency job and I was like, do I want to do this? Like when I graduated, I was like, do I want to take that risk again? This is a really cushy paying job.
Right.
And I did, and I left it, and the private practice just boomed. And I'm like, no freaking way. No way this is happening right now. Like the quote, fortune favors the bold. I swear, like it's annoying sometimes because you're like, I don't want to. I want to lay down at 2:00 and watch a show. But like, fortune favors the bold, as far as like, I don't know, taking shit and throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
So when you graduated, you had an opportunity to stay somewhere that was paying really well, but you said, I want to start my own thing. So tell us about that process of starting your own practice and what that looked like.
Yeah, so I really it was a very tough decision because I had worked in agencies before that were just like so not my jam. I'm like, I will do this for the amount allotted time that I need to get my hours. This one was like young adults with substance abuse. I'm like, oh, freaking, I love young adults. I feel like that's when I was the most lost and so impressionable that I love that demographic. But it was the hours. Any therapist listening, it is insane what they put you through. compared to the money. Like you are just giving your all for not that much in return. And I still had my side clients. So I had my private practice clients, and then I was going to the agency. And my fiance was like, "Where are you? Are you here? You're already in school for like 3 years." And I'm like, "Okay, good to know." And I felt like I was back in sales, like in the little cubicle. And I had a supervisor who was outside of the agency talk to me. Cause like, right, like this is a message that I wholeheartedly believe. If you are a mentor, your mentor better have a mentor. Because you can't be flying by the seat of your pants. But my supervisor was like, "Are you being the most benefited there?" And I was like, "No, we are, you know, talking about really intense things, which obviously I'm equipped for, but the way in which like there's just so many rules and structure that I'm like, if I had this person as a client outside of here in my own session, we wouldn't be focusing on this like intense issue so much. Like there's just more room for healing when you're not in such an intense structured environment."
Yeah. It can
And
look a
my
lot of
age.
different ways.
I was like, I can't do this at my age. Like I need to I need to see if it works. You need to go be yourself because you got nothing to lose.
Yeah. And you'd had two huge pullings your whole life, sounds like, really, is helping others and astrology. And you really saw a straight path to using both of those things to help people.
So this happened during the pandemic then is when you decided to go your own way, basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I started doing readings for free. For free. I was doing readings for free in 2020, and I was having so much fun. And then I was charging more. And then I was charging a little bit more. And then I was like, "Okay, no, we got this." Like it was so great. And like my vision was like, I'm going to put astrology with therapy. But at the same time, I have to keep them separate because the code of ethics. So it's clearly defined on my website. Like if you want to do astrology, you could do astrology. If you want to do therapy, you could do therapy. And then under the umbrella of, we call it life coaching, we get to do both because there are so many laws and rules with having the credentials that I have right now.
Right.
That I have to stay in those guidelines
Right.
while I'm still, yeah.
That's an interesting way to move through that, navigate that. The life coaching thing is smart, where you can really do both. Because that's what I would want. That would be my choice. I'd be like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to negate the astrology piece of it. Yeah, the chart parts, because I do think that brings you a lot of juicy nuggets that you may not be totally aware of. So, yeah.
And you know what? Like, this is just all the therapists out there. I swear there's going to be a revolution soon with all the therapists because you literally have to work for a year and not get paid. And I think that is absolutely insanity. And you're taught in grad school you can't have a personality. You're taught in grad school you can't have a sip of water when you're having a conversation with someone because you need to be a blank canvas. And I think all the therapists now are like, I'm going to do, they're doing somatic work, they're doing human design, they're doing whatever, EMDR, like all of these things that really will allow them to actually help people.
Right.
Well, not any one form of anything shows a complete picture, right?
Yeah.
Like it's really, really difficult to understand anything in a linear, direct way. Like we're all so complex. There's so many different modalities and ways to know self. And it's just silly to think that any of us think that one way would be the all encompassing way or be the correct way,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, I watch a lot of Shrinking, that show. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes. Yeah, I can tell.
I love that show. And I like watching it. And it's so cool because you do think of like therapists as like being so separate and like just that pristine thing, right? Of like nothing can cross wires there. And I think, you know, our friend Sarah, who does human design, she also used to do therapy and she does art therapy. It's just been so beautiful to watch the complexities of how she incorporates all of those things to help people and how much more you get from that experience with her. Like it's just such a different feeling than hopping around from therapist to therapist because you feel like no one gets you.
I was just going to say there is like a gentleness that I do think is important with therapy that isn't always displayed in, you know, straight up astrologers, straight up human design. Like they're just like, here's your reading. So I always advise people, I'm like, if you are super sensitive, if you are having severe things, like severe things, go to a therapist. They will cradle you. They will make you feel safe. Not that the other people won't make you feel safe, but there is like a lane for, you know, where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with Amanda. I think that we've experienced this the same too, is that even amongst us, sometimes one of us will get something out of something more than the other one does. And your friend will go and do this, and then you'll do it and be like, that didn't land the same with me, right? It's not all going to resonate. It's the same with food. It's this, right? Like we're just totally different creatures. And so although we are connected and we have a lot of similarities, not all modalities are going to speak the same to all people, which is why there's a lot of things out there and they do a lot of the same techniques and speak a lot of the same similar language, but in a different way. And it's going to resonate with some people more than it does others. And that's okay, right? That's why your family never was like, oh, astrology, right? And you were like, I feel this shit in my soul, right? Like, I am absolutely going to continue down this path and I'm not going to let any of your opinions sway me. It's so fascinating to me. And so the people in your tribe will find you. The people who are meant to be helped by you will find you because they need that modality and it speaks to them in such a way, right? And that has to be mixed with personality. I will say that every therapist I've ever gotten anything from, I also really connected with them personally, and not in an inappropriate way, but I felt in order to feel safe, you have to feel seen and you have to have a certain personality. And so my adult children have been searching for therapists recently, and they'll go and they were like, I left there and I was like, nope, move along. Like as soon as you leave there and you're starting to tell me about your experience that's not great, that means it's not the right person, right? So just keep going and it's like an interview until you find that person that makes you feel seen and safe. And then your therapy is going to be effective. But if you stay with somebody who makes you feel uncomfortable from the jump, it's not the right person. And that's not to mean that they're a bad therapist.
Right.
It's just not the right match. Right? Would you agree with that?
No, you're right. I'm actually laughing because I have like a 6-session minimum policy I do with people because I give them a full 30-minute consult because you'll know over the consult if it's a good consult. And then you are supposed to get uncomfortable, but when you start to get deep, you're not supposed to be uncomfortable. I mean, like right off the bat, you're just coming there, you know, to an unbiased party. Just word vomit. We don't care.
No, these people are not doing pre-screenings. So this is literally their first meeting, you know, so they're not interviewing them on the phone. It's just it's someplace you just call and it sets up, you know, it's something through their insurance or whatever that is. Right. And you're just it's a blind date and they don't get the chance to talk to them. And then their first, you know, and I'm really trying to make my girls lean into their gut and be like, listen, if you didn't feel it, when in that session where you're just getting to know each other, most likely you're not going to feel it 3 sessions from now.
My mother started putting me in therapy in 8th grade. I was a hyper kid, you know, back then they didn't know what to do with you. Maybe they did, but my generation, I don't think they knew what to do with you. And I just love to encourage people, like, don't be afraid of therapy. Like literally you need an unbiased opinion in your life, because you're going to go to your friend. She's going to tell you what you want to hear. You're going to go to your partner. He's going to do, what is beneficial for both of you. But like, you need an unbiased party in your life that you can compartmentalize your shit.
Yeah.
Totally.
I agree.
It's honest.
Therapy is great for everyone.
And so what made you decide then to write a book?
Oh, geez. Well, I had to turn my pain into pleasure. I was like, what are all these jobs for? And the book is for young adults. Like, all I heard from working at the young adult thing was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I just quit this job. And like, the book is literally like, okay, it's time to move on. You've learned what you had to from that job. Take that lesson. Each chapter has a lesson learned.
Love that.
Which I think is like helpful, because we don't reflect on how much we've accomplished. We don't reflect on how much we've learned. We don't reflect on how much we even did this morning already.
Great.
Mhm.
So it really was closure for the first half of my life, is what I needed and just like sharing with young adults, like, it's okay to not know.
Yeah.
Amen.
And what did you learn just like specifically from the writing process, right? Like, I know I have some friends that have written books, and I know that in and of itself is a learning thing that happens. Like, you learn something about yourself when you decide to write anything. So far, what has the process been like?
It started when I was living in LA doing stand-up comedy, and I had to write my own jokes, and like, my whole shtick was making fun of my parents' country club lifestyle. And they had like 5 kids, and like, we always say, like, where were our parents? Like, we don't know where they were. So I started writing about my family in my younger 20s, and like, seeing the comedy and humor in it. I was like, this is so dysfunctional. Like, there's a piece called Humor in Hospice. Like, it's just where everyone's just, it's a nut show. It's a nut show. So I started writing about it, and I was like, okay. Like, I knew I always wanted to write something, but Hollywood was just, I couldn't hang. I had 4 jobs. I had 4 jobs in LA, and my friends were making 40 grand, which was a big deal, in Chicago, on the playpen. And I was like, literally driving Lyft, working at a Chinese restaurant, handing out flyers in San Bernardino. Like, I was just like, why do I do this to myself? This is just like so crazy. And now I'm watching all the SNL people, and I'm like, damn, you should have stayed in LA. No, that I wouldn't have been here.
Did you watch the 50th anniversary yesterday?
I'm literally going to watch it today.
Oh, it's so good. Enjoy. It is awesome.
I'm going to watch it today too. I didn't get to watch it last night either.
What I thought was magical though about watching, I won't give anything away, is just like to be able to see them when they were so young, joining like all the like the flashbacks and the clips of them being just so young, and like what it did for their career. And especially back in the day, a lot of them are writers too. And the being able to be that creative in that space at that age and figuring it out and writing things, and them being like, this is horrible, we're not airing this. And I forget which one, like they were like Tina Fey and Amy Poehler doing their like audience interviewing thing, and they pan to him and they're like, do you still have that sketch you wrote? And he's like, yeah, it's in my hand right now, do you want to try it again? Like, I think it's just so interesting in this process of like writing and discovering yourself and using your voice in that way. And everyone learns something when they're in that vein of having to figure out how to be creative in that space. So I didn't know if there was anything through your writing that you were like, I didn't even know this about myself until I really got serious about writing this book.
I think that's how the book actually became written. Like what you just said. I was writing these short stories, and I was like, what's the common theme? Oh, you having a bunch of jobs. And like, everyone just saying, what are you doing now, Teresa? Like, that is the common theme. It's almost like I need to get out of my comfort zone like once or twice a week, or else I'm like jumping out of my skin. So it's like, if anything, I need to find peace in the stillness of it all. But I think, if you're like, I think it's an inner feeling, and it's been coming up a lot lately. I think because Jupiter's moving into Gemini, or it's in Gemini. And it's like nurturing that creativity, like you would nurture your admin work, like you would nurture your sleep schedule. Like, you need to go play.
Mm.
I'm gonna join this improv group here in Denver because I'm just like, I need to be somewhere and not know what comes next. I need that unpredictability right now to jumpstart what's going on.
Totally.
So you were finding that going job to job and going place to place. And now in order for you to really create foundation, you understand that you need that as a human and finding other outlets for it, right?
Yes, like it doesn't have to be the job. Like,
or your location. Yeah. Or I need to move to a new city, or I need, like you were filling that void in a different way. And it sounds like that you are recognizing that. And I think that's part of the journey is like, wow, I've been doing all this stuff and that's fairly not productive, right? Or destructive, some would say, to self-destructive. And now I'm rooting and I'm figuring it out, and I'm finding these other outlets for that part of my personality that really desires. I'm a Sagittarius. I need new things. I need to play. I need to, so I just said that to Amanda this morning. I'm like, man, winter is brutal in Ohio. I'm getting bored out of my mind. I need to find some things to do to play, right? So I think that's an interesting, whether that's you've stumbled on that for yourself, a nuance of your personality that you stumbled on while you're writing it. I think that's really, really cool to recognize that in yourself.
Thank you. And by no means do I know everything. Like, the book literally talks about the self-sabotaging that you just mentioned. And then it's like, oh, I became a therapist for young adults. I'm like, oh, it all aligns while I was running around. And now I'm sitting, like, listening. I'm like,
this tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And are you taking new clients right now? Is it virtual? And then if so, where can people find you and book a session?
I am taking new clients right now. You can find me at spikespirit.com or on Instagram, spiked_spirit_counseling. It is all right now on Zoom. It's been working great. I do a grounding session in the beginning. There's a tarot card as well. You get a Google document for every session because, we're going to talk about a lot of transits and you're going to be like, wait, what? So I think that's important. And yeah, I think that's where you can find me.
So on the website, you can choose astrology, therapy, or life coaching and get both.
Yes. Yep. You can find that on the website or on my Instagram. And then Calendly will lead you to a consult call.
Awesome.
Perfect.
So do you have any events or anything coming up that you would like to share?
I am actually, I would love if anyone was interested in joining. I will be hosting a retreat in Costa Rica. In March. It's right around the corner, guys. March 9th till the 14th. My best friend's dad, he has land there, and we've been going there since 2018. We've been doing ceremonies there, and I teach yoga. She teaches HIIT, and we're gonna have a dance party and a cacao ceremony, and the land is just magical. I mean, and it's a discounted rate because Envision Festival was canceled this year, so normally this week-long trip would be super expensive. But it's for a week, and we're going to do journaling. There's going to be some mini astrology readings. So yeah.
Sounds amazing. What are the dates again? March 9th through the 14th?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we know the land. Everything is literally under this bubble. It's paid for. All you have to do is pay for your flight and then a deposit, and then yeah.
Perfect.
That's
Perfect.
awesome.
Yeah. We'll definitely add that in the show notes so that people can look it up. And that's on your website as well?
That is on my Instagram.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
All
Yeah,
the
we'll share it
details.
to our Instagram story so people can find that, and hopefully someone can join.
Yeah, we love that. Sounds like I haven't never been to Costa Rica. I'm dying to go.
You're a
So.
Sag. You like it. It's the land
I
of
love it.
Sagittarius is
Oh,
Costa Rica. I feel
love
like,
it. I've always been drawn to it. Always. So it's on my
you
bucket list.
know, we could also do your astrocartography and see
Ooh,
what
I would love
gems
that. I
you
saw
get.
that for the very first time, by the way, that just landed in my radar in this last week, that was even a thing. I had no idea. I had no idea that was even. Did you know that?
Yeah,
I had
just
no
because
idea.
our friend Shay got her son.
She did?
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's fantastic. Yes, I would love to know that. I know it's somewhere close to water. That's what I know.
I do those as like a small add-on. So you don't even
Okay.
need to do a whole session for those. I love when people find their astrocartography. Like
Oh, I would love
mine is
that.
so aligned. It's crazy.
And Denver lines up with it?
Oh yeah. Like
Yeah.
everything is just like easy breezy here, where like East Coast has like Pluto going through it, and then Georgia has short-term love affairs and like
Ooh.
made out with someone at the Georgia airport once. Like it's wild how these things all it's all
Oh,
aligned.
that is fascinating to me. I would love to have that done. That would be fantastic. Okay, so 3 women, or it doesn't even have to be 3, but any women that you would like to shout out to as far as that's been inspirational for you and your journey.
Okay, so this is funny. Gabby Bernstein.
I love her.
She's just
Love.
it's like she's just always been there for me since like 2014, which is like I'm aging myself, but a little over 10, 11 years ago. She's a Scorpio, so she's no bullshit.
Yeah.
And she teaches A Course in Miracles, which I think is just the truth at the end of the day. I think it's the love, the love, the love. Like I love her work. And then my sister-in-law, which is Jen Gottlieb. Gabby Bernstein actually wrote the foreword to her book.
Oh,
She is just the best. I mean, she's just very motivating and inspiring. Like just meeting her, knowing her, spending time with her. She's a very inspiring, motivational woman, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And she's like a speaker, and she doesn't put like emotion into thing, and she gets shit done. And I'm like, oh,
I love you. I love you.
I love you. Yes, because that Cancer moon can sometimes have emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then Jenna Zoe. She is huge in human design. Like she did the human design platform. And I've dabbled in human design and I love it. And I've found validation in that. But I really love her because her message is always like, you don't need to change anything for who you are. Like you are who you are. You're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like you are perfect. You are perfect. Yeah. And yeah, I like her work. My books are open.
Awesome.
And
when does your book come out?
October, November.
Okay.
Oh, so exciting.
Perfect. Well, I want you to let us know when your book's out so that we can promote your book for you. And you know, if you want to come back on maybe after it's out for a while, let us know how it's going. We'd love to hear from you, give some updates.
I would love that. And if anyone's listening or they listen to this podcast, I'd love to offer 10% discount if they mention this podcast for my services.
Perfect.
We'll add that to the show notes, making sure people know where to find you and all of that. And also remember to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, and Apple Podcasts. That's where you can stream all of our content, and we will make sure people know where to find you. And it was so lovely that the universe brought us together somehow, some way. I still can't figure out, but here we are.
I love that. Yeah, it's been great.
What the name of my practice is Spike Spirit Counseling. I came up with the name Spike Spirit in 2014 because I had just gotten back from LA and I started a t-shirt subscription company. by myself at my aunt's house, and I wanted your spirit. I'm like, yeah, because I just came from LA and it was so spiritual. And then I landed in Chicago where it was like hard and whatever. And so I was like, you know what? Your spirit deserves to be spiked a little bit. Spike your spirit.
I love that.
You know, it doesn't have to involve alcohol, although it does sound like it. But it's just like not to get too heady in any one direction. Don't get too heady in the spiritual stuff. Don't get too heady and spiking it. Just nice together.
I love that. I love that. That is awesome. Well, it was such a joy and a pleasure to meet you and chat with you today. And we wish you all the best of luck in your future book writings and all the things that you do.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you guys.